Hey, Trail Kreitzer at goHUNT. Last week we did a video series where I set up a new Matthews bow. This is the Matthews Atlas that I set up last week. I've got it to a point where I'm pretty happy with it. The next stage is to actually tune the bow. I've got my cam timing to where I think it's pretty dang close, but the first step in tuning a bow for me is to just double check the cam timing. I just want to make sure that those cams are rolling around at the exact same time and that the cable stop is actually touching the cables at the same spot on both the top and the bottom cam. So that's the first step in the tuning process for me. I've drawn this bow back several times. I've got it to where it balances quite well. It's comfortable. I've got the stabilizers on it. I've got the rest where I think it needs to be. Knock point is close. So the first step, like I said, is I'm just going to check the cam timing. So I've got a Last Chance archery draw board here, and we sell these in the goHUNT gear shop. These will work with any of your Last Chance presses, including the Easy Press Green. So if you got one of those at home and you're just getting into building your own bows and put them together, these little draw boards are a great little accessory that you can pick up, and it'll help you to make sure that your cams are always in time, which, like I said, is an important stage of the process of tuning your bow. So I'm just going to pop the bow in the bow press, and I'm going to check the cam timing first. First step, you're just going to take a little bracelet or rubber band and secure the bow. Make sure that it's going to stay on the peg here. So the next step is just to pull out the cable here. I'm going to take this and loop it through the D-loop, and then it's got a little safety mechanism right here, which you're going to want to make sure that you use. It's just a precaution in case your D-loop was to break. I don't like to ever draw my bows or even put them in a draw board for that matter without an arrow. So if like I was doing this at home, I typically will knock an arrow and I'll put a target out there just in case something was to happen. I just don't want that bow to ever dry fire, but this should be a precaution just in case something were to happen. So I'm just going to loop that around the string and make sure that it's secure before I actually draw the bow back. So I'm just going to start cranking that back, which is going to draw the bow. You can see how the bow is coming back as you go. As I draw that back, what I'm looking for are your two stops, your cable stops. So you've got these two mods that are on your Matthews bow or any other bow that you might be shooting. Those are going to rotate around on the cam, and what they're going to do is they're going to contact the control cable. What you want to do is you want to make sure that those are contacting the exact same time as those cams roll around. So another great feature of these is you can actually use this with your press. So if you want to fine tune this, you can use the press to kind of roll those back as well, just to really fine tune and get an idea of when those are contacting. You can get a really, really precise measurement as you look at those to make sure. And it looks like the bottom cam is actually contacting slightly ahead of my top cam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to either put a twist in the cable in the top cam to advance that, or I'm going to take one out of the bottom cam to kind of move it back so that those are actually rotating and coming around at the exact same time. So I can see I got to make some adjustment to my cam to get those cams perfectly timed. I'm just going to relax the string. And like I said, the bottom cam is hitting before the top cam. So I'm going to show you how to make those adjustments so that you get those cams rolling around and contacting the exact same time. So I'm just going to put the bow in the press, and I'll need to press it real quickly so that I can then make some adjustments to the control cables to get the cam in the exact spots that I need it to be. So if you can see right here, you get an idea of what you need to do to make that adjustment. So if you see, if I shorten this, it's going to rotate this cam back, which is actually going to increase this distance or the time that it takes to roll over and actually can contact this cable. So what I want to do is I want to put some twists in this cable to actually shorten it. I could do that, or I could release some in the bottom cam to advance that. But I'm just going to take this cable here, I'm going to add maybe a twist and a half to advance that cam. I'm going to double check it once again in the draw board just to make sure that those cams are rotating exactly the same and the cam timing's perfect. So I'm just going to press the bow. Again, you don't have to relax it too much, just enough to get your string off, give you some room to adjust this cable. So I'm going to take the cable off here. Again, when you take your cable off, you want to make sure that you don't have any rotation in it. So you want to be very aware of the orientation of it when you take it off. As I look at this cable, I can see that it is rotating this way. So if I'm going to shorten that, I want to add twists to it the exact same way. So I'm going to add one full twist and then check it again. So I'll add one full twist to this control cable. And then I'm just going to pop it back on the peg, make sure that it's in the exact grooves it needs to be. Make sure that all the strands are over the peg. You want to check the string, make sure that the string is tracking exactly in that cam. I may have to do it a little bit more. All right, so you want to make sure you have some tension on it again as you relax it. Make sure that the strings are in all the grooves so that you don't have anything pop off. You want to check both cams. This is a step I highly encourage you take every single time you press your bow because you don't want to derail your bow. So now visually, I'm just going to look at the cables, the holes, just kind of check and see what it looks like. And then I'm going to pop it back in the draw board and check it again just to see what that cam timing looks like. All right, so I made those adjustments. I've got it to where it's exactly in time. As I rotate those back, I can see that the mods are exactly coming around, hitting the control cables at the exact same time. One thing I would note that's interesting at this point in the video is you can just see how much slack, how slack a string is at full draw. That's why when you're shooting, like any pressure on your nose, corner of your mouth, any kind of pressure on this string can have real impacts on your accuracy. That's why you want just very light anchor points, but you can see how loose that is. It's kind of an interesting thing to note. So now I've got the cams totally timed. My next step is I'm going to jump in and start the tuning process. For me, my first step in tuning is to shoot the bow through paper. So I've got a few arrows here behind me. I've got some 300 spine gold tips. I've got a 300 spine black eagle. I've got a bear shaft. I've got some fletch shafts. Selecting the right arrow is a whole other piece of the puzzle. I would say start with the graphs that are suggested by the individual arrow companies. You can also use software online, like from Archer's Advantage, which has a shaft selector program. I think it's about $10 for a yearly subscription. That'll allow you to input the exact arrows you want to shoot, the length, the components, and you can play with the different components to try to get a spine of an arrow and a weight that's going to work exactly for your setup. That's one way to do it. The other way is to stick with those charts that's suggested by the individual arrow companies based on your specs, which is your draw length and your draw weight and your arrow length, and then kind of fine tune it by cutting those arrows as you go and tuning as you go. I've had pretty good luck with the Archer's Advantage. I just start there typically, and then cut my arrows to where I've got a little bit of slack to give. If I have to trim some more, I can do that. But I'll start there, and my next step is to just start shooting those through paper. So I'm going to let the bow down. I'm going to move my little paper tuner, my chronograph here, kind of a makeshift paper tuner for the day. I'm just going to shoot this through paper, and I'll give you an idea of what I'm looking for. And if there are some issues, we're going to tune those out of the bow. All right, so I got the cam timing perfect. It took me a minute to get that, but I've got it exactly dead nuts. So both of those cams are rotating exact same way. They're contacting each cable at the exact same spot. So I'm happy with that. My next step is to shoot it through paper and just see what it looks like. So first I'm going to shoot a fletch shaft. So I've got one of Neville's arrows here, which is a 300 spine gold tip platinum pierce. He likes the 4 fletch, so he's got 4 blazer veins on there, but I'm just going to shoot that through paper. And what I'm looking for is the tear. So I'm going to shoot it through paper and you'll kind of get an idea, but what I'm ultimately looking for is just like a perfect bullet hole. So you'll be able to see where the shaft entered and then the 4 veins coming off of that. And then from that, I can make adjustments either to my rests or to my cams. And I can move those either left or right or potentially up and down on my rest if I need to tune out any issues with the paper tear. So I'm just going to step back to about 6 feet and I'm just going to shoot this through paper and just see what it looks like, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so I shot the fletch shaft through paper, and you can see I've got a little bit of a right tear, so meaning that the point entered to the left, the fletching part of it entered to the right, and it's also a little bit high. So I've got a little bit of a high right tear. I'm going to shoot a bare shaft through, and I may shoot another arrow just to see what that looks like as well, just to make sure that it's not an issue with the arrow. I like to bare shaft tune. I like to shoot it through paper, and I also like to use a fletch shaft. So I'm going to shoot a couple more arrows just to confirm what I'm finding, but right now, I mean, initially it looks like a slightly high right tear. Yeah, so once again, I can see I've still got that right tear. You can kind of see where the bare shaft entered here in the middle, and you've got a little bit of a tear back to the right, so I've confirmed that. I've got a right tear. So my next step is to tune out this right tear. And I got a couple options. One of my options would be to move the rest to the left. So if you've got a right tear, you can move your rest left away from the riser for a right-handed shooter. If I had a left tear, I could move my rest in towards the riser to the right, and that would kind of clean that up. That's one option. The other option with the Matthews bow is you can use the top hats. So the top hats are these little spacers that are in between your cams. You can see you've got a spacer here and a spacer here. On this bow, the spacer is wider on the right. It looks like it's that way on the top and the bottom cam. One of the things that I can do is I can flip these so I can move my cams to the right to clean up that right tear. And that's ultimately what I'm going to do, is I'm going to move these cams to the right to clean up that tear. What that allows me to do is it allows me to leave my rest in the exact same position, which is that 13/16, which is the optimal position for this rest. It gives me maximum clearance for my vanes so that I'm not going to be contacting my cables. It's not going to look wonky. So that's what I'm going to do. My next step, I'm going to move my top hats to the right so I can move those cams and ultimately clean up this right tear. All right, so I'm going to move my cams to the right. I'm going to do that with these top hat spacers. If you shoot a Matthews bow, this is a great option for you. You can buy a top hat kit, which comes with different size spacers. So what I think I can do for this bow is move the thicker spacers that are here closer to you guys to this opposite side and just switch those, flip-flop them. So what it's going to do is just going to shift my cams to the right. That should clean up that right tear, and if I have to do some fine-tuning with the rest at that point, I can. But I'm just going to flip those top hats. I'm just going to show you how I do that. First step is just to undo a little set screw right here on the back of the axle. You only have to undo one side, so you just screw that out and just pop that out. It has a little spacer that sits on the inside of it that you can see there. That fits on the inside of the limb. All right, so the next step is just to press the bow. You don't have to take much slack out of it, but you do have to take some in order to push those axles through. So I'm just gonna put a little slack in it. I'm gonna take an Allen wrench and I'm just gonna push the axle out to the other side. I'm gonna pull that out. I wanna make sure that I keep that handy so I don't lose it. Next step, I'm gonna just pop the cam out. And as you pull that cam out, you want to make sure that you just kind of keep some tension on it. Last Chance does sell these great little contraptions that go onto your press that can hold things like cams or strings. Those are great additions to your bow press in your home bow shop if you can grab those. Next step, you're just going to take an Allen wrench and you're going to push it from the inside and push out those spacers. So you can see that's the thick spacer right there. All I'm going to do is I'm going to push both of those out from the inside. And I'm just going to flip-flop them. So this was the thin one. I'm going to put it on the other side. And I will take the thick one and put it here on the left side for a right-handed shooter. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just shifting that cam to the right. And that should clean up that right tear. So just again, you're going to take your cam, put that back in between the two limbs, line that up. You're going to take your axle, which is here, slide that out the exact same way that you pulled it out the first time. You can just kind of look through the hole, make sure that it slid through, and then you're going to take the set screw that locks it on this side and just tighten it in.
Same kind of thing.
All right, so the bottom cam, I'm going to do the exact same thing, exact same steps, super easy. You're just going to pull out the set screw on one side and then push the axle through and then flip those top hats so that the thicker side is now on the left. and it just is going to push that cam further to the right. So when you're tuning a Matthews bow, remember that you've got some different tools. You can tune by your rest, but like I said, if you want to leave your rest in the same spot that you've got it, which is that 3/16, which gives you good clearance, you always have the option to tune with the top hats. And I don't know if many people take the opportunity to do that, but in my opinion, it's one of the best advantages of these new Matthews bows is the ability to tune left and right with your top hats. For that one. All right, so I've made those adjustments. I've shifted both cams, top and the bottom, over to the right. And I'm just gonna go back through this exact same steps. I'm gonna shoot it through paper again at 6 feet and just see what my paper tears tell me. And I think it's gonna be pretty close. I may have to make a slight adjustment to my rest at that point, but I think it should be close. So I'm just gonna shoot those through paper again and see what it looks like. All right, so I made the switch to the top hats. I just rotated those and moved the thicker side to the other side. I did that for the top and the bottom cam. I got it all put back together, and I'm just gonna go ahead and shoot it through paper, and hopefully I get a perfect bullet hole. If not, I can talk my way through it and show you guys how to fix any paper tear that you might have, whether it's a left, right, up, down. Hopefully it's a perfect bullet hole, so I'm just going to step back here. I'll probably shoot all 3 arrows here. Once again, I've got this X Impact by Black Eagle. I got a Platinum Pierce bare shaft and a fletch shaft from goHUNT. So I'm just going to step back and shoot those 3 through paper and just see what the paper tear tells me. I did it. All right, so I shot 3 arrows through paper. Black Eagle is the first one right here in the middle. Feel really good about that paper tear. The second one was the 4 fletch Platinum Pierce. You got to kind of push the paper in a little bit to see, but again, that hole is almost dead center. Looks like my bare shaft may be a little bit knock high. I'm not too concerned about that because that could be the individual arrow. But I would say this bow's pretty well tuned at this point. My next step would be to take a fletch shaft and a bare shaft back to 20 yards, and I'm going to shoot those at the exact same point and just see what the bare shaft does in relation to the fletch shaft. Hopefully those two hit perfectly together. Depending on the angle of the arrow as it goes into the target, I may have to make some slight adjustments, but I would call this bow tuned. Like I said, ultimately for me, the next step, after this, paper tuning, maybe a couple bare shaft arrows at 20 yards, would be to sight the bow in and then to put some fixed blade broadheads that I plan on hunting with and shooting those out to like 60 yards. Ultimately, that's my goal, is to get a broad tipped arrow to fly straight out to 60, 80 yards. And that's really going to tell me how good my tune is. All right, so I'm just going to jump in and show you some quick ideas on how you can tune your bow at home through paper if you're struggling with some things. I'm just going to run through some situations on how to fix those. So if you have a left paper tear, meaning your point is impacting and your vanes are to the left, for a right-handed shooter, you're going to move your right wrist into the right. And again, it doesn't take much. Conversely, if you've got a right paper tear, you're going to move your rest away from the riser, so you move that back to the left. If you have a high paper tear, meaning your point is entering, your vanes are high, you can actually bump up your rest, or you can move your knocking point down. I prefer to make a slight adjustment to the rest. The other thing you can do is you could add a twist or a half a twist to your top cam cable. And then conversely, the same thing. If you've got a low paper tear, meaning your point is impacting and your vanes and your knock is low, you could potentially lower your rest. You could move your knock point up, or you could make an adjustment to your cams, and that's just simply by adding a half or a full twist to your bottom cable cam. So those are some options for you if you're having trouble tuning your bow. Like I said, one of the things I really like about Mathews bows is the ability to move those cams left and right and leave your rest dead center where you like it, giving you plenty of clearance. You have multiple options. I think people think that tuning a bow is like, you know, this super complex thing. It's really not. If you just dive in, do some tinkering, I would urge anybody, if you think you're going to get into archery for the long term and it's something that you really like doing, you enjoy shooting your bow, just bite the bullet, get yourself a press. You can do all this work at home. There's plenty of resources out there. I've done some articles on it, which you can follow along. Again, you know, it's a pretty simple process. So that's how I tune my bow. Like I said, next step, bare shaft for me at 20 yards and then broadheads at 60. Let me know if you have any questions. Drop them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer those for you. Time to get your bow tuned up.